The wolf stepped into the middle of the frozen road just as Caleb Mercer's truck came around the bend. He hit the brakes so hard the rifle case on the passenger seat slid forward and slammed against the dashboard. The truck fishtailed once on the packed snow, tires grinding over ice, headlights cutting through the early morning dark. For one terrifying second, Caleb thought he would hit her anyway. The wolf stood directly in his path, silver-gray body rigid, breath rising in white clouds from her muzzle, but the truck stopped 6 feet from her. The engine idled roughly. The wolf did not move. Caleb stared through the windshield, both hands locked around the steering wheel. "Well," he whispered, "that's not good." He had lived in northern Montana all his life, in a county where winters were long, neighbors were far apart, and nearly everyone had an opinion about wolves. He had heard them at night from his cabin in the foothills beyond Clearwater Ridge. He had seen their tracks crossing logging roads. Once, years ago, he had watched a pack move across a distant hillside at dusk, gray shapes slipping through snow like smoke. But he had never seen one this close, never like this. She was a female, he guessed, lean and long-legged, with a thick winter coat dusted in frost. Her ears were forward, her yellow eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made the hair rise on the back of his neck. She was not crouched to attack. She was not snarling. Her lips were closed, her head low, her body tense but controlled. Still, she was a wolf, and Caleb was a hunter. That fact sat between them like a loaded weapon. It was late December, just before sunrise. Caleb had left his cabin before dawn to check the northern property line where elk sometimes crossed from the public forest into his uncle's old grazing land. He had his hunting license, his rifle, and a thermos of black coffee. He had told himself he was going out because the freezer needed meat. That was only partly true. Mostly, he needed the quiet. At 46, Caleb was a man with too much silence in him and not enough peace. He had returned to Clearwater Ridge 3 years earlier after his wife, Rachel, died from an aggressive cancer that seemed to arrive, consume, and vanish with cruel speed, leaving him with a daughter who no longer spoke to him the way she once had, and a house that still held Rachel's handwriting on freezer labels and old grocery lists. His daughter, Emily, was 16 now. She had her mother's dark hair, her mother's stubborn chin, and a grief that came out as anger because anger was easier to aim. She hated hunting. She hated the cabin. She hated that Caleb had moved them back to the land where he grew up instead of staying in Bozeman near her school friends. She hated most days that he did not know how to talk to her without sounding like he was giving instructions. The night before, they had fought. Again, over college applications. Over her missing curfew. Over the fact that Caleb had said, "Your mother would have wanted," and Emily had exploded before he could finish. "Don't use Mom to win arguments," she had shouted, tears bright in her eyes. "You don't get to decide what she would want." Then she had slammed her bedroom door so hard the kitchen window rattled. Caleb had slept badly, so he had risen in the dark, taken the truck, and driven into the forest with the old familiar excuse of hunting. Now a wolf stood in front of his truck and refused to let him pass. Caleb slowly reached for the gear shift. The wolf's ears twitched. He put the truck in reverse. The wolf moved, not away, closer. Caleb froze. She took 2 steps toward the hood, then stopped and turned her head sharply toward the trees on the right side of the road. Then she looked back at Caleb. He frowned. "What?" The wolf turned again toward the trees, back at him. Then she made a sound, not a howl, not a growl, a short, rough whine. Caleb's grip tightened. "No," he said out loud, "absolutely not." The wolf stepped away from the road and stood near the ditch, facing the forest, waiting. Caleb stared at her. He had tracked animals since he was a boy. His father had taught him how to read snow, mud, broken twigs, scat, wind direction, feeding marks, and the small disturbances that told stories to people patient enough to notice. He knew when an animal was fleeing. He knew when it was stalking. He knew when it was injured, cornered, or confused. This wolf was not doing any of those things. She was stopping him, and now, impossibly, she seemed to be asking him to follow. Caleb looked at the rifle case, then back at the wolf. He thought of every warning he had ever heard about predators. He thought of how quickly a wild animal could turn. He thought of how foolish it would be to step out of a truck before dawn and follow a wolf into the timber. Then he heard it, faint, almost swallowed by the engine. A cry, high, thin, and desperate. Caleb turned off the truck. The forest fell into cold silence. The cry came again, not from the wolf, from the trees beyond her. A pup. Caleb's stomach tightened. He reached slowly for the radio clip near the dashboard, then stopped. The signal in that stretch of road was unreliable at best, and the local wildlife office would not be open yet unless dispatch patched through. Still, he grabbed it, along with his phone, bear spray, and rifle. He hesitated over the rifle, then loaded it but kept it pointed down and safe. He was not going into the woods unarmed, but he was also no longer going in as a hunter. He opened the truck door. The wolf backed away instantly, not far, but enough to show him she wanted distance. Caleb stepped out into the cold, boots crunching over snow. The air smelled of pine, ice, and old wood smoke from some far-off cabin. His breath steamed. The first blue hint of dawn touched the eastern sky. The wolf watched him. "I don't know what you want," Caleb said quietly, "but I'm coming." The wolf turned and slipped between the trees. Caleb followed. She stayed ahead of him by 30 or 40 yards, a gray shape moving through spruce and lodgepole pine. Every so often she stopped, looked back, and waited. The snow beneath the trees was deep but crusted, difficult for Caleb's boots, easier for the wolf's wide paws. Branches sagged under frost. The forest was dim and dense, full of blue shadows. The cry came again, louder now. Caleb saw tracks, wolf tracks, several sets, some adult, some small. Then something else, human boot prints, recent. His unease deepened. The wolf led him down a slope toward a narrow creek bed, frozen along the edges but still running black beneath a skin of ice. A line of old fence posts cut through the trees there, remnants of a grazing boundary abandoned decades ago. Rusted wire sagged between the posts, half buried in snow and brush. The wolf stopped on the opposite bank. She did not cross the creek. She stood facing a tangle of fallen branches near the old fence line, body low, tail stiff, ears flat with distress. The crying came from inside the tangle. Caleb moved carefully closer. At first he saw only snow, wire, and branches. Then something small moved. A wolf pup was caught in a snare. Caleb's breath stopped. The pup was maybe 3 or 4 months old, too young to be far from the den but old enough to follow the pack on short movements. Its fur was gray-brown, thick and soft, its face still round with youth. A wire loop had tightened around its chest and one front leg, pinning it against the base of a fence post. The more it struggled, the more the wire bit. Blood stained the snow beneath its shoulder. Its cries had weakened from panic into exhaustion. Near the pup, half hidden beneath the branches, was another shape, a second pup. This one lay still. Caleb swore under his breath. The female wolf gave a low, warning growl. He froze immediately. She stood 20 yards away, eyes locked on him. Not because she wanted to attack, but because every step he took toward her pup tore against every instinct she had. "I know," Caleb whispered. "I know." He slowly backed up and lifted both hands. The mother's growl softened into a broken whine. Caleb's heart pounded. The snare was illegal, no question. Montana had rules for trapping, tags, locations, check times, and equipment, but this was not legal trapping. This was an old-style wire snare hidden along a game path, unmarked and cruel, set low enough to catch anything that pushed through the fence gap. Fox, coyote, dog, wolf pup, maybe even a fawn. Caleb crouched, careful to keep distance from the trapped pup. The wire looked fresh enough. The boot prints nearby confirmed someone had been here recently. Anger rose in him, hot against the cold morning. He had hunted all his adult life. He believed in clean shots, seasons, limits, respect for the land, and eating what you took. He had argued with people who hated hunting and with hunters who made him ashamed of the word. This kind of snare was not hunting. It was cowardice. The pup cried again. The mother wolf stepped forward, then stopped herself, trembling. Caleb tried his radio. Clearwater Dispatch, this is Caleb Mercer, North Forest Road past mile marker 9, near the old fence line by Alder Creek. I have an illegal snare with a live wolf pup caught, adult female present, possible second pup deceased. Need wildlife officer and vet response immediately. Static. He tried again. Nothing. His phone showed 1 bar, then none. Damn it. The pup's breathing was fast, too fast. Caleb looked at the wire. He had fence cutters in the truck. Of course he did. The truck was maybe half a mile back uphill. Going back would take time. Staying meant he had nothing but a hunting knife and pliers in his pack. The wire might be cuttable with pliers, but getting close enough would be the problem. The mother wolf watched every movement. Caleb spoke softly without knowing if tone mattered. I need tools. I'll come back. The wolf's eyes followed him. He began backing away. The pup cried. The mother gave a sharp bark-like sound, stepping toward him as if panicked that he was leaving. Caleb stopped. I'm coming back, he said. Ridiculous words, necessary words. He turned and climbed the slope fast, slipping twice, breath burning in his lungs. When he reached the truck, he grabbed heavy gloves, bolt cutters, a blanket, a first aid kit, and the emergency flare kit. He tried the truck radio with the antenna booster. This time, dispatch answered. Clearwater Dispatch. Caleb nearly shouted with relief. He repeated the situation. The dispatcher's tone changed immediately. Stay away from the animal. Wildlife officer en route. Estimated arrival 30 minutes. Do not approach the adult wolf. The pup may not have 30 minutes. Sir, do not approach. I hear you, Caleb said. He did not say he would obey. He drove the truck forward only far enough to improve signal, then left it running with hazard lights on and returned to the woods with the cutters. When he got back, the mother wolf was no longer on the far bank. For one terrifying second, Caleb thought she had gone. Then she appeared behind a spruce 10 yards to his left. He froze. She had circled him. Her head was low. Her eyes burned. Her body was thin beneath the winter coat, thinner than he had noticed before. One hind leg seemed stiff. Her muzzle was scarred near the nose. She was exhausted too, and desperate. Caleb lowered the bolt cutters slowly to the snow. I'm not here to hurt them. The wolf stared. He took one careful step toward the trapped pup. The mother growled. He stopped. They remained like that for what felt like a full minute. Man, wolf, trapped pup, frozen creek, illegal wire, cold dawn spreading through the trees. Then the pup made a sound that was barely a breath. The mother's head snapped toward it. Caleb saw something change in her, not trust. No wild animal owes trust to a human with a rifle, but recognition of urgency. She backed away 2 steps. Caleb moved, slowly. So slowly his muscles shook. He set the rifle against a tree far behind him, visible but out of his hands. He kept the bear spray at his belt but did not reach for it. He pulled on the gloves and crouched several feet from the pup. The trapped pup tried to scramble away and shrieked as the wire tightened. The mother lunged forward. Caleb threw himself backward. Okay, okay. The wolf stopped, teeth bared. The pup panted in panic. Caleb's mind raced. He could not touch the pup while it thrashed. He could not sedate it. He could not wait forever. He needed to cut the anchor point instead of handling the animal directly. The snare wire looped around a fence post root and threw a rusted twist at the base. If he could cut the main support wire from the side, the tension might release enough for the pup to wriggle free or for responders to finish. He shifted to the right, farther from the pup's head. The mother watched. He reached the bolt cutters toward the anchor wire. Not the pup, not the loop, the anchor. The pup trembled but did not thrash. The cutter's jaws closed around the wire. The sound of metal snapping rang through the cold air. The loop slackened. The pup collapsed sideways. The mother rushed forward. Caleb scrambled back, grabbing the cutters and nearly falling into the creek. The wolf went straight to the pup, sniffing, licking, nudging. The wire was still around the pup's chest and leg, but no longer pulled tight to the post. The pup could move a few inches now. Its front leg looked bad, swollen, bleeding. The mother tried to bite the wire. Her teeth scraped uselessly against the twisted cable. Caleb's chest tightened. "You can't chew through it." The wolf looked at him. For the first time, her gaze held not warning but terrible need. Caleb heard engines in the distance. Relief hit him so hard his knees almost weakened. "Help's here," he whispered. Wildlife Officer Dana Holt arrived with 2 state rangers and a veterinarian named Dr. Ben Ishikawa. Dana was in her late 40s, sharp-faced, calm under pressure, and not impressed by civilians in dangerous situations. She took one look at Caleb, the wolf, the trapped pup, and the rifle leaning against a tree and said exactly what he expected. "What the hell did you do?" "Cut the anchor, not the loop." "You approached a wolf with pups." The pup was choking. Dana's jaw tightened, but she looked at the pup and did not argue. Dr. Ishikawa was already preparing a tranquilizer dart. "Adult female first." Dana nodded. "We can't work with her loose." The mother wolf sensed the threat immediately. She moved between the humans and the pup, weak but fierce, teeth flashing. Caleb stepped back behind Dana. His heart twisted at the sight. She had led him here, allowed him close enough to help. And now humans had arrived with darts, ropes, and authority she could not understand. Dr. Ishikawa took the shot cleanly. The dart struck the mother in the shoulder. She spun, snapped at it, then staggered away from the pup, fighting the sedative with everything left in her. She tried to remain standing, tried to keep her eyes on the humans, tried to protect the little body in the snow. After several minutes, she sank slowly onto her side, still breathing, still alive. Dana moved fast. The second pup was confirmed dead. Likely caught first, perhaps in another loop hidden beneath the brush, and strangled before the mother could free it. The living pup was carefully covered with a blanket while Dr. Ishikawa cut away the remaining wire. The wound was ugly. The snare had carved into the skin around the chest and leg. The front leg was bruised, possibly fractured, but still warm. The pup was dehydrated, hypothermic, and in shock. "Alive," Dr. Ishikawa said. "Bad shape, but alive." Caleb looked away and swallowed hard. Dana photographed the snare site, tracks, boot prints, and wire placement. One ranger collected the cut snare pieces as evidence. Another found 2 additional snares along the fence line, one baited with deer remains, one empty but freshly set. Dana's face grew colder with each discovery. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Caleb stared at the boot prints. "I know most people who come through this land." Dana glanced at him. "Then start thinking." They transported the sedated mother and injured pup to the Regional Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. The dead pup was taken too, respectfully, for documentation and testing. Caleb followed in his truck after giving his statement at the scene. He was not sure why he went. No one asked him to. Maybe because the mother wolf had stood in front of his truck and leaving now felt like betrayal. The rehab center was 2 hours away near the town of Elk River. By the time Caleb arrived, the sky had cleared and the day had turned brutally bright, sunlight flashing on snowfields and frozen ponds. Inside the facility, staff moved quietly around the wolf intake enclosure. Dana met Caleb near the entrance. "You didn't have to come." "I know." She studied him. "You hunt?" "Yes." "Wolves?" "No." "Ever trap?" "No." She nodded once, as if filing that away. "The mother is stable, thin but stable. Mild injury in one hind leg, old or recent. The pup is critical. Ben's working now." Caleb looked toward the treatment room. "The other pup?" Dana's expression softened slightly. "Nothing could have been done." He nodded. That did not make it easier. For the next hour, Caleb sat in the waiting area beside a vending machine that hummed too loudly. He still smelled like snow, pine, and fear. His gloves were stained with blood from handling the cut wire. He had washed his hands twice and still felt it under his fingernails. His phone buzzed. "Emily, where are you?" He stared at the message. For a moment, he considered writing back something simple. "Out, back later." Instead, he typed, "Wildlife emergency. Wolf pup caught in illegal snare. I'm at Elk River Rehab." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. A moment later, "Is it alive?" Caleb closed his eyes briefly. "One is," she replied immediately. "One?" He typed, "There were 2 pups. One died. Mother alive." No response for a minute. Then, "Can I come?" Caleb stared at the words. Emily had not asked to come anywhere with him in months. He called her. She answered on the first ring. "I can drive," she said before he spoke. "Emily, I want to come. It's not something to look at for curiosity." "I know that." Her voice was sharp, but beneath it was something raw. Caleb softened his own. "It's hard." "I know." He thought of the dead pup wrapped in the snow, the mother fighting sedation, the living pup's small body under the blanket. "Okay," he said. "I'll ask if visitors are allowed." Dana, when asked, considered for a moment. "Only in the public observation area. No contact, no noise, no photos unless we permit. And she needs to understand this is not a zoo." "She will." Emily arrived an hour later, driven by their neighbor Mrs. Bell because Caleb had the truck. She came in wearing a parka, snow boots, and the guarded expression she used whenever she was afraid someone might see she cared. Caleb stood. For an awkward second, neither of them knew whether to hug. Then Emily looked past him toward the treatment wing. "How is the pup?" "Still alive." "And the mother?" "Stable." Emily swallowed. "Can I see?" Dana led them to a small observation room with one-way glass looking into a quiet recovery enclosure. The mother wolf lay on thick bedding inside a secure den space, still groggy but awake enough to lift her head. The pup lay in a separate warmed area connected by a protected gate, wrapped in blankets, leg bandaged, chest rising and falling unevenly. Emily pressed one hand to the glass. "She's watching him," she whispered. The mother's eyes were fixed on the pup. Even injured, sedated, and surrounded by unfamiliar smells, she did not look away. Caleb stood beside his daughter. "She stood in front of my truck," he said quietly. "Wouldn't let me pass." Emily turned to him. He told her the whole story then, not dramatically, not polished, just the road, the wolf, the cry, the snare, the pup, the dead sibling, the illegal traps, the rescue. Emily listened without interrupting. Her face changed as he spoke, anger and sadness moving through it like weather. When he finished, she looked back at the mother wolf. "She knew you were a hunter." Caleb gave a short breath that was almost a laugh. "I don't think she knew that." "She knew you were human, close enough." He did not answer. Emily's voice softened, but she still asked. The words stayed with him. The pup survived the night. That was the first miracle. The second was that the injured leg did not need amputation. The snare had cut deep but missed the major tendon and artery. There was infection risk, nerve bruising, and tissue damage, but Dr. Ishikawa believed the pup could recover with treatment. The mother wolf recovered faster physically. She was underweight and had an old injury near her hind leg, likely from a previous encounter with wire or a trap, but she was strong enough. The challenge was reuniting her with the pup safely while both remained under medical care. Wildlife staff named the mother Tala for record keeping. The pup was named Rowan. Emily said the name fit because rowan trees were supposed to protect against evil in old folklore, which Caleb had not known and did not admit he found moving. For 3 days, Tala and Rowan remained separated by a barrier. They could see and smell each other. Tala whined low whenever Rowan cried. Rowan, weak but improving, tried to crawl toward her when he heard her. On the fourth day, after the bandages were changed and the pup's fever dropped, Dr. Ishikawa allowed controlled reunion in a larger recovery enclosure. Caleb and Emily watched from the observation room. The gate opened. Rowan limped forward. Tala went to him so quickly Emily gasped, but the wolf slowed at the last second, lowering her head, sniffing the bandaged leg, the chest wound, the pup's face. Then she began to lick him with slow, careful strokes. Rowan pressed into her fur. Tala curled her body around him, nose resting over his shoulders. Emily wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Caleb pretended not to notice until he realized he was doing the same thing. The investigation into the snares moved quickly at first, then slowed. Dana Holt found 4 more illegal snares along the abandoned fence line. Trail cameras from a neighboring ranch showed a dark pickup on the service road 2 nights before the rescue. Tire tracks matched a local vehicle registered to a man named Travis Boone, a part-time trapper with a history of conflict with wolves after losing livestock years earlier. Caleb knew Travis, not well, but enough. They had shared coffee at the feed store, talked weather, talked elk. Travis was the sort of man who turned every conversation eventually toward government overreach, predators, and how people from cities cared more about wolves than ranchers. Caleb had always found him bitter, but not stupid. Apparently, he had been both. When Dana asked Caleb if he would give a formal statement about finding the snares, he said yes. Travis heard. 2 days later, Caleb found a note tucked under his truck wiper outside the grocery store. Wolves kill too. Remember what side you're on. Caleb stood in the parking lot with the paper in his hand, feeling old anger, old loyalty, and something like shame collide inside him. He had grown up around men who believed wolves were threats first and living things second. He understood ranchers' fears. He understood lost calves, thin margins, government rules written by people who never fixed a fence in a blizzard. But he also understood what he had seen in the snow, a mother trying to save her pup from a human cruelty that had nothing to do with fair defense. That night at dinner, Emily saw the note on the counter. "What is that?" "Nothing." She picked it up before he could stop her. Her face hardened. "Who wrote this?" "Probably Travis Boone." "The guy with the snares?" "Maybe." "Are you still going to testify?" Caleb looked at his plate. "Dad." "Yes," he said. Emily stared at him as if evaluating whether to believe it. Then she nodded. "Good." He looked up at her. She shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable. "What?" "Nothing," he said. It was not nothing. For the first time in a long time, she looked at him not as an obstacle or a failure or a man doing a poor imitation of both parents at once, but as someone who might still choose correctly. The weeks that followed brought small changes. Emily asked to visit the rehab center again, then again. She began helping Dana's office sort trail camera footage for the illegal snare case as part of a school volunteer project. She read about wolf behavior, trophic cascades, livestock conflict prevention, and non-lethal deterrence. She and Caleb argued about some of it because arguing was still one of their main languages, but the arguments felt different. Less like war, more like weather clearing. One evening she came into the kitchen while Caleb was cleaning his rifle. She stopped in the doorway. "You still going hunting next week?" "Elk season's almost done." "Are you going to shoot anything?" "If I get a clean shot and need the meat, yes." She folded her arms. "I still hate it." "I know. But I know you're not like Travis." Caleb set the cleaning cloth down. That small sentence did more to him than she could have known. "I'm trying not to be," he said. Emily leaned against the doorframe. "Mom used to say trying counts only if you keep doing it." Caleb looked at her. She did. For once, neither of them turned away from the mention of Rachel. At the rehab center, Rowan grew stronger. His limp improved. The chest wound healed. He began playing with enrichment objects, chewing branches and pouncing clumsily on Tala's tail when he thought she wasn't looking. Tala tolerated him with the patience of a mother who had nearly lost too much to be annoyed by a living pup's foolishness. But a wolf pup needed more than his mother. The pack had not been located at first. Winter storms erased tracks. Wolves ranged far. Without the pack, releasing Tala and Rowan would be complicated. A mother and single pup could survive, but their chances were better if reunited with their family group. Dana's team searched for weeks. Finally, trail cameras captured 3 wolves moving along a ridge 10 miles north of the snare site. 1 adult male, 1 yearling, 1 younger female. The adult male had a distinctive pale scar across his muzzle. Tracks and timing suggested they might be Tala's pack. Then came the breakthrough. A camera recorded the male returning repeatedly to a high point above Alder Creek, howling at dusk. Calling. Tala at the rehab center began howling the same evenings. The sound carried through the facility walls and made everyone stop what they were doing. "They're looking for each other," Emily whispered during one visit. Dana nodded. "Seems like it." Release was planned carefully. Tala and Rowan would be taken near the ridge where the pack had been seen. The team would use remote monitoring and avoid direct contact. There was no guarantee the pack would accept them after weeks apart, but wolves are deeply social, and Tala's response to the distant howls gave the team hope. The release happened on a clear February morning. Caleb and Emily were allowed to observe from a distance behind the wildlife team, with strict instructions to stay quiet and still. Snow covered the ridge in clean white sheets. The sky was pale blue. Pines stood dark against the morning light. Tala's transport crate was opened first. She emerged slowly, head low, nostrils working. Her winter coat shone silver and cream. Her yellow eyes swept the clearing, the trees, the slope beyond. Rowan came out behind her, larger now, still slightly uneven in one front leg, but lively and alert. For a moment they stood side by side. Then a howl rose from the ridge. Tala froze. Every person there froze too. Another howl answered from farther up the slope. Rowan pressed against his mother. Tala lifted her head and howled. The sound rolled across the snow, long and haunting, filling the cold air with something ancient enough to make Caleb's chest ache. From the trees above, 3 wolves appeared. The scar-muzzled male stood in front. He stared down at Tala and Rowan. Tala took 1 step forward, then another. Nobody breathed. The male wolf moved first. He trotted down the slope, slow at first, then faster. Tala met him halfway. They circled, sniffed, touched muzzles. The yearling came next, then the younger female. Rowan crouched uncertainly, tail low, then sprang backward when the yearling sniffed him too enthusiastically. Emily made a tiny sound that was half laugh, half sob. The pack gathered around Tala and Rowan, not perfectly, not like a movie. There was caution, jostling, sniffing, rank uncertainty, but no rejection. Finally, the scarred male turned toward the trees. Tala followed. Rowan looked back once, not at Caleb in particular, but toward the open clearing and the people standing at its edge. Then he bounded after his mother. The wolves disappeared into the timber. Emily grabbed Caleb's hand. She had not done that since she was a child. He held on carefully, afraid that if he moved too much, she would remember herself and pull away. She didn't. Travis Boone was charged that spring with multiple wildlife violations related to illegal snares. He denied targeting wolves specifically, then contradicted himself twice in interviews. The case was not as severe as some wanted and not as minor as others claimed. He was fined heavily, lost trapping privileges, and faced probation and mandatory restitution to wildlife enforcement programs. People in town argued about it for months. Some said it was too harsh. Some said it was not harsh enough. Caleb testified to what he found and nothing more. He did not make speeches. He did not pretend the issue of wolves and people was simple. But when Travis glared at him outside the courthouse and muttered, "You chose predators over your own kind," Caleb finally understood the answer. "No," he said, "I chose not to be cruel." After that, the town divided around him for a while. Some men stopped inviting him for coffee. Others quietly told him he had done right. Dana asked him to help with a community program teaching hunters and landowners how to identify and report illegal snares, avoid wildlife conflicts, and protect working animals without breaking the law. He almost said no. Public speaking felt worse than facing a wolf. Emily said, "You should do it." So he did. He was awkward at first, then better. He stood in grange halls, ranger stations, and school gyms telling the story of the wolf in the road. He told it plainly, not as a fairy tale, not as proof that predators were harmless, not as an argument that rural people should ignore their real concerns, but as evidence that respect mattered most when fear was present. "She stood in front of my truck," he would say. "I thought she was the danger. Then I found what she was guarding. A snare had done what no clean hunter should tolerate." That line stayed with people. Years later, Caleb would still think of Tala whenever snow lay heavy on the roads and the forest went quiet before dawn. He never saw her again in person. He hoped he never would. A wild wolf keeping distance from humans was a good thing, but trail cameras caught glimpses sometimes. A silver female moving with a pack, a young wolf with a slight unevenness in one front leg, the scarred male. New pups in spring 2 years later, tumbling near a den site high above Alder Creek. Emily went to college in Missoula and studied wildlife ecology, which Caleb considered the least surprising rebellion she could have chosen. She still hated hunting, though she admitted she understood some of it better. He still hunted, though less often, and never without thinking first of the difference between taking a life cleanly and leaving suffering hidden in the snow. They talked more. Not perfectly, not every day, but enough. On the third anniversary of the rescue, Emily came home for winter break. She and Caleb drove the North Forest Road at sunrise, not to hunt, but to check trail cameras for Dana's winter survey. At the bend where Tala had first blocked his truck, Caleb slowed. Neither of them spoke. The road was empty. Snow lay clean between the trees. Emily looked out the window. "This is where she stood." "Yes." "And you almost didn't follow?" He glanced at her. "I almost didn't understand." Emily nodded. After a moment, she said, "That happens." Caleb knew she was not only talking about the wolf. He pulled the truck to the shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said. Emily looked at him. "For what?" "For not understanding you sooner." Her face changed just a little. The old pain was still there. Grief did not vanish because wolves survived and fathers apologized late. But something in her softened. "I didn't make it easy," she said. "No." She laughed once, surprised. He smiled. Then she reached across the seat and squeezed his hand. Outside, the forest stood silent, holding its secrets. Somewhere far beyond the road, wolves moved through the timber, guarding their own, fearing humans when they should, trusting rarely, surviving anyway. The story people told was simple. A wolf stood in front of a hunter's truck, and what she was guarding changed everything. But Caleb knew the truth was larger. The wolf had not changed everything alone. She had only forced him to stop, to look, to follow the cry beyond what he thought he knew. What changed everything was what came after. The illegal wire in the snow, the wounded pup, the mother's terrible courage, his daughter's hand on the glass at the rehab center, the choice to stand against cruelty even when it came from his own side of town, and always, at the center of it, Tala in the road. Not tame, not grateful, not asking for kindness in any soft human way. Just a mother with no other chance, standing between a hunter and the path forward until he finally understood that sometimes the thing you fear is not the danger, sometimes it is the messenger.